Shalom from Israel. I'm Ariel Ben Aram. After a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half of recess, we are back with our reflections on the book of Psalms by King David. The last psalm that we were reflecting on was Psalm 48. Now we're going to go into 49. Goes like this: Hear this, all you peoples, listen, all you inhabitants of the world. Both low and high, rich and poor together. We see that the King David is talking, although sometimes it gives us the impression that he, by his speaking, he's evoking or some kind of being the speaker of God. So, the King of Israel has many functions, and one of his functions is to be not just the speaker of God's will, but also the one who implements God's will as the leader. In other words, all the people of Israel is commanded to fulfill God's will, but the king is the leading voice and the leading implementing force. So in this case, when we speak, when we hear the king speaking, then we know that it's something that is not coming just from his voice or from his own persona. It's also coming from God, basically. So in this case, he is approaching his people. But in this case, he's talking about all the peoples. So he's talking about the world, all the nations. And he makes an interesting reference to low and high. Of course, we can understand this in many ways. Of course, high positions, low positions. Rich and poor together. Now, we see when we say low and high, rich and poor, we clearly see differences, gaps. Not necessarily differences, but gaps that have to be filled. So we can see this low and high and this poor and rich as qualities. In this case, qualities of the peoples. We have said many times that one Hasidic understanding or interpretation of nations and peoples, normally if it's not the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, we are referring to qualities in consciousness like trends and traits in consciousness that need to be guided by a higher purpose. So in other words, when we're talking about, for instance, feelings, passions, or the intensity with which we feel or experience our emotions, or even our instincts, this would be a good example of the peoples or the nations. At the same time, there are other references. For instance, when the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, is telling us about the 7 Canaanite nations, in other words, the peoples who were living in the land of Israel before Israel, the people of Israel, coming to inhabit the land. They represent 7 negative qualities in consciousness. We have referred that to them before. So nations and peoples both represents either qualities in our consciousness that need to be guided, that need to be conducted, that need to be ruled on. As we mentioned, emotions, feelings, passions and instincts. And also the negative traits and trends that may characterize these levels of consciousness. In other words, we have negative emotion, we have negative feelings, or negative tendency, negative passions, or negative instincts. both categories are applied to peoples and nations. So it's good to go back to the interpretation that we have been giving to the nations throughout our commentaries, not just on the book of Psalms, but also on other subjects in our blog and in this YouTube channel. So in this case, when we're talking about low and high, we're talking about higher traits and qualities in our consciousness, meaning positive, we have a natural positive trend, and the ones that have a lower expression. Rich and poor, the same story. So richness, we associate richness usually with possession, but in this case, it's about having and poor not having. So in other words, how enriched, how strong are certain feelings, emotions, traits, or tendencies in our consciousness. Now, the summoning, King David is summoning all these qualities, high and low, rich and poor, together. In other words, there's a point in which when we are going to have a purpose in life, we have to use all the qualities, the traits, skills, talents, and we put them together in order to achieve that goal, the purpose that we are aiming for. So they have to be together. In other words, if we're going to study, for instance, we need to focus our intellect, our mind, our thoughts, even our feelings, emotions, in what we're doing, in what we're studying, in what we're learning. In other words, when one of those elements is out of the picture, the learning is not complete. Because it's an aspect, it's a facet of that learning that is missing. We can apply this to other circumstances, not necessarily to learning, but to achieving, like to performing a job. We have to be 100% focusing on this job in order to make it right. We have to pay attention, we have to really engage in doing, we have to love what we're doing, a little bit of emotion and feeling in what we're doing, in order to make it happen in the best possible way. So in this case, King David is summoning, is calling every quality of consciousness, positive and negative, low and high, skillful, unskillful, talented or untalented, developed, not developed, in order to do something that he's going to tell us. Then he said, my mouth, verse 3, will speak words of wisdom. I was telling, I'm going to tell you something important, pay attention. My heart shall utter understanding. This is something about to be understood, like grasp. Verse 4, I will incline my ear to a proverb. It's quoting a proverb. I will open my riddle on the harp. Now, we know that the book of Psalms, they are books of praise to God. And praising in most cases, or generally speaking, involve metaphors, allegories, as poetic forms. So when we're praising God, we try to do it the best way possible. So we use metaphors, we use images in order to illustrate what we want to tell him, what we want to share with him in a poetic, beautiful way. That's why the book of Psalms are so beautiful, because they include these images that evoke the beauty that he wants to experience as a means to communicate with God. So when I say I will open my riddle, my trying to understand whatever complexity may have what we're going to say, what we need to understand. On the harp, so we're going to do that playing with music. In this case, music is like an accompaniment. It's like, I'm going to tell you something singing. I'm going to tell you something with music. Remember that some folk songs that I want you to tell me this singing. Sing it to me. So it's like put some kind of feeling, emotion on it. Now, there are esoteric meanings that we're not going to get into this because what is the point of if the message has a hidden message, what's the point? But sometimes harp in the context of Jewish scripture, we're talking about qualities also. Sometimes King David says, this is a song to be sung with a harp of 10-string harp. So we're talking about like 10 different qualities that we have to take into consideration when we are getting the message. But we're not going to get into that for the moment. So harp in this case is an accompaniment that involved, as we said before, something special, because we're going to say this singing. So there's a question now, verse 5. Why should I fear in the days of evil, when iniquity at my heels surrounds me? So what would I do if I am in a negative situation, to put it in simple words? Verse 6, those who trust in their wealth and boast in the multitude of the riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give God a ransom for him. It's easy to understand. In other words, we cannot redeem anybody from his iniquities or from his negative predicament or negative actions, iniquities in this case, with money. In other words, we are accountable in this case to God. And again, we have to understand God as the goodness that is inside of us. God is not an old man with a long beard, with his face. No. The way we in Judaism relate to God is goodness. Actually, King David says it many times in his psalm when he says, Hodu Hashem ki tov ki leolam hasdo. We have to thank God because he's good. It's the main quality of God. So then when we understand, it's about goodness. So yeah, that's what it's all about. So when we do something negative or evil, we are accountable to goodness. It's like goodness is asking us, what are you doing? What have you done? Your essence is good. You're supposed to be led and conducted and inspired and motivated by goodness for the sake of getting goodness as a result, as an end result of being good. So if you are not conducting yourself in goodness and you're doing it in a negative way, we are accountable to goodness. We are accountable to love. We are accountable to that which sustains us, that gives us a life and sustains us. In other words, everything that we want to have in life, of course, goodness, good. That's what we are accountable for, or to in this case, accountable to. So, we cannot repair damages. This is a deep statement. Because of course in the current legal system in most countries, not most but some of the civilized countries, it's a liability. We are responsible for damages that we may have caused, either to public property or to private property. So we are accountable. So in this sense, we pay with money and then we some kind of, not necessarily fix the damage, but at least we compensate for the damage that we have caused. But in this case, King David is saying this is not redeemable by money. It's not. So you have to do something, and this is what we're going to see what it's about. So we cannot go and tell God, say, I give you all the money that I have in order to redeem even myself, by the way. This is including not a third person, which is what King David is saying, but also ourselves. In other words, nothing material could redeem our negative behavior, except for changing our negative behavior. So this is not a matter, we have to understand this, that sometimes we try to solve everything with money. That's the message here. But in the case when we are accountable to the goodness that God wants us to be, to have, and to manifest, that's the currency here. Goodness. It's not money. The currency is good actions. This is how we redeem ourselves and others by telling them to do the same. So, verse 8. For the redemption of the life is costly. No payment is even enough. Verse 9. That he should live on forever. That he should not see corruption. In other words, if we want to have an eternal life, meaning living forever, not seeing corruption, because of course if we live forever, there's no corruption. That not can be bought with money. Now, he's talking about here about redemption, the final redemption, the world to come. In order to achieve that state of uncorruptiveness and eternity, money is not the currency to get to that state. So we have to have that clear. I see that people know this, by the way. Once we die, we're not going to get anything with us. Like we say, oh, I'm going to take my millions with me when I die, and then maybe I can buy someone in the world to come, or in heaven. So for those who are not Jews can understand it. It's impossible. Besides, there is no monetary currency in those realms. Anyway, let's continue. And King David gives the reason. The reason, he said, because he sees that wise men die, likewise the fool and the senseless perish, and leave the wealth to others. That's basically what we were saying before. When we die, we don't take anything with us. 11. Their inward thought is that their houses will endure forever. So when people are so materialistic, they believe, oh, when I die, I'm going to end up somewhere with this also money, and it will wake up in another material setting, or in this case, materialistic setting. But that's not the case, obviously. And the dwelling places to all generations. In other words, they don't want to take the houses with them. They name the lands after themselves. But they say the lands after they're talking about the property. It's like, oh, this is mine. It's like, it has my name. This house has my name. This car, which is true, by the way. We have a deed that says this house is mine, or this car is mine. So, King David is telling us, forget it, that's not the case. Verse 12. But man, in spite of his riches, doesn't endure. He's like the animals that perish. What matter? What perishable life. 13. This is the destiny of those who are foolish, and of those who approve their saying. In other words, the one who play the game of the fools. Selah, forever. Now, it's interesting. I was leaving this verse to say, I'm going to stop here, 48, because 49 has to do with something that in our blog we have been mentioning in every commentary in the blog. Probably like about 99% of the times we refer what we called, that we have patented this phrase called egos, fantasies, and illusions. In other words, all the desires that we have out of feelings or belief of lack. I want to have this, like the coveting, the envying, that kind of thing. Those are egos, fantasies, and illusions. I say ego because it comes from a sense of belonging. This is mine, I want this for me. I want to have it. It's like I feel the lack, I need it. Even if it's not needed, it's something that is, that's what we call it, an illusion or a fantasy. Fantasizing about it. Like for example, about this woman. And we fantasize and fantasize and fantasize and we try to have her. I mean, we have it in terms of fulfilling the fantasy. And at some point we may achieve that. Get the money, pay someone, or seduce the woman, the person. But guess what? The point is that it won't last as much as we think it would last. It's temporary. Every illusion, every fantasy is temporary. And we know that, by the way. This is for the moment, this is for the weekend, this is for the night. Next day, the fantasy will be different, or the reality will be different. So King David is, in this psalm, is relating to materialistic fantasies and illusions, desires, those mirages that we make real in our own mind. And most of them has negative consequences or they carry a price to pay. So they're not free. And in the case that when we don't achieve them, but we keep them in our mind, in our imagination, then we become obsessed or attached to them. See, the attachment is not necessarily, there has to be exterior attachment. You say, oh, this is the object of my desire, I'm going to be attached to it and have it with me all the time. Can be also here. So becoming like a negative thought form or a thought form like goes with us everywhere. Actually, at this point in which we cannot get rid of it because it's with us all the time. Why? Because we made it that way. This is the kind of state of consciousness that King David is approaching. So it's like, be aware of this. So those who live in this fantasy world of materialistic illusions based on possessions, whatever they want to have, whatever they have in their mind, either material or mental or inside of their own mind, you cannot take that with you to a place in which there is no corruption and life is forever. That bag you cannot bring with you. So he's not talking about the material possessions necessarily. He's just talking about the foolishness that we read here. The belief, not necessarily the object. So, verse 14, they are appointed as a flock for Sheol. It's not translated. Sheol usually is related to the grave, death, basically. When we're talking about death, it's something obvious, people die. But what King David is saying here, you're going to be dead alive. Meaning, either you live, you are dead to this higher realm that everybody dream or desire or yearn to return to be. That's not going to happen. Like, it will put you exactly in the opposite place. And again, it doesn't have to be the physiological death. It's talking about the death of being disconnected to what is really alive. So this is what when we say ego's fantasies and illusions, the opposite is what we call love's ways and attributes. Because those are the ones that are good to us, the one that transcends, by the way, goodness, the goodness out of love's ways and attributes, transcends time and space. Because it's what sustains matter and life. It's something that precedes life. Therefore, it precedes life, transcends life, because once life is over, it still continues. So this is what we need to be aware of. So what is life? What represents life? You just mentioned it already, the goodness of love's ways and attributes. And what is death? The foolishness of ego's fantasies and illusions. Okay, so let's continue. Let's repeat again. They are appointed as a flock, because that's several, they go together. You know, ego's fantasies and illusions belong to the same flock. And then they seem to go to death. And again, it's something because they're not alive, it's a fantasy, something that we create or we give value. In other words, when we make a trip to a casino or a fantasy land to get entertained, we know that there's no life in that. Everything is in our imagination or in our mind or in our fantasies. We know that there's no life in them. They don't help us feed or feel fulfilled as human beings. Or again, you may say, okay, but it fulfills me to play in a casino, it fulfills me to go to a show or an entertainment show, but it's temporary. And at some point, we know that it's not going to feed something higher than our emotions. We say, yeah, but it's vacation, it's taking a break from reality. We don't have anything against Las Vegas or anything like that, or entertainment. Absolutely none. And it's a matter of choice. Either we choose to spend time there and live there, and even knowing that it's a fantasy that we'll never have because it's in our minds, and we know that it's temporary. Or get to what is real. I remember that on Facebook somebody put like a picture of the entrance of a cafe. It's like a cafe or kind of a small bar, and it has a sign that says there is no Wi-Fi here, there is no internet here, so you have no choice of talking to each other. It's like, is it something? I mean, we're not saying that being online or being connected to the internet, of course, it's in some way it fulfills some kind of a necessity or need that we have, either learning, communicating with other people. But the distinction that we're talking about here is like, instead of being, that's what the idea of design, and you know what is the idea of design is also, is that instead of being with yourself in your own reality, which is you and the computer and the internet, try to be in a different realm. Something that is more alive, like talking to someone and looking in their eyes. That's the point. So it's like, it's a similar comparison. It's like, either you go to fantasy land or you deal with reality. So it's intangible, that you can see directly and live it and experience it. And you make you feel good, and you know that it's real. It's something like that. So let's continue. Dead shall be the shepherd, meaning this kind of, this is shepherd, this is like the direction that we give to our lives. Oh, I want just to be entertained. The people who are like that, they want to be with us because they want us to entertain them, to make them feel well. And then we say to them, it's like, why would I have to do that? You want to be happy, be happy. You don't need me to be happy. You can be happy yourself. And I don't need to entertain you or tell you a story in order to make you happy. Because after all, it's a story. So what part of your mind, of your consciousness, I am feeding with these entertaining stories? That's it. So we say, you know what? I'd rather spend my table with someone who is not looking for entertainment. Someone who wants to communicate from a place of understanding, wisdom for a change. And then we exchange that. And a conversation that makes our understanding, our feelings, and our ideas to be better people in order to achieve more uplifting experiences. Like really, really uplifting. Like we get to a point in which there is no sadness, there is no depression, there is no negative approach to reality. So everything is positive and we all are happy and celebrating. That's real. Based on something direct. It's not an idea or on a screen or something that we're listening. It's something that we are really sharing with each other. Something like that. So, what is death shall be the shepherd? Again, the whole idea of getting engaged in something that is not alive, something that is a fantasy or an illusion, something that is death, basically. The upright shall have dominion over them in the morning. It's interesting. This is a very revealing. I was going to say it's like a hidden meaning. Actually, it's very revealed. It's like this is the dark part of it. This is the night. You know, the night, like being in the darkness of the grave, and being led and directed by death. You see, but the upright, the one who knows what matters in terms of goodness, goodness is what matters in this world. We have to say that to all these fanatic people that are in the world killing people. You're like, hey guys, stop. This is not about hating, this is not about killing. The whole point is to be happy. So you guys are mistaken. Drop your guns. And start holding hands, start dancing and being happy. And let's go to the other place with this happy to make them happy also. And then the circle grows and expands. And then we are a happy world, being happy with each other. Why? Because we're sharing the goodness that we are meant to be, to have, and to manifest with each other. That's the point. So that's the upright, by the way. Yeah, it sounds like an ethical definition, of course. Righteousness is an ethical definition. But again, goodness, by definition, is righteous. It's just, like it has justice. There's something right about being good. So he's referring to this, King David is referring to this, that the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, meaning once he get out of the righteous, get out of the night of ego's fantasies and illusion. It will be a long night, by the way. Then it will come to the morning. But everything is clear, and the light of goodness is what is shining on us to see what we need to see, the way we need to see it, in order to recognize it as good. The beauty shall decay in Sheol. Talking about the temporary excitement that is called beauty. Of course, it's making reference to the exterior beauty, but again, the idea is like, wow, when we say we're watching an entertainment scene, And then we say, wow, so beautiful. Because, you know, we like it, like the Summer Olympics or the Winter Olympics. We see it like, wow, beautiful. We don't even see good. It's like beautiful. But again, it's temporary. We don't spend our lives jumping against gravity. This is a moment. There are other things that are more important. And we know that, by the way. That's why we go once a week to the ball game. Not some people do every day, but it's a momentary thing. But again, we have to pay attention to to whom or to what we get ourselves into, to what kind of fantasies is. Make an inventory. What am I going to get from this? And then time flies. Then one day it's like, wow, I spent my life going to the ball game for 55 years. Wow. It's okay. But again, it's a matter of choice. What kind of thing we're really looking for us? Either that temporality in which our lives goes very fast, or something that we want in this life, not necessarily to go slow, but to be significant and make that significance permanent in our consciousness. So when we die, then we take that with us, not the house, not the car, not the illusion, something that we know will transcend with us. This is the goodness I want to find anywhere I go after I die. This goodness will be there waiting for me, because it's the same goodness that gave me life. So I'm going back to that origin that gave me life, what we call Father, God, or Creator. That's the return to Him. So it's not about despising life or material life. No, all the way around. We have to find this goodness in this material life in order to make it similar. It's like, hey, this is as good here as it is up there. And we know that. So it won't change. It doesn't make any difference when we die, because we will go to the same place. But we have to have the courage, the determination to bring that goodness that we know exists in endless proportions, infinite proportions, in a higher realm of consciousness we call heaven. We can do it here. We know that. We experience that. Problem is that some of us, they have this idea that's not possible. That this is a hell. That the world is hell, and the only way that we can get rid of this is after we die. Is that wrong? We know they are wrong, and they know they're wrong, because there's something good in their lives that keep them alive. So it's like that denying their own essence. It's like, yeah, I'm good, but evil is more powerful. So how could you say that you're still alive? You know? We believe that evil is this God, that is controlling the planet. It's not true. It's not true. We allow the negative traits and trends in consciousness to control our lives. So it's not like, oh, I'm possessed by this thing, like this famous bumper sticker in the 60s and 70s. The devil made me do it. It's not so. We know that. We made the choice that evil rules our lives. We allow that. And then we feel so miserable that we want other people to be miserable. Then we basically establish the kingdom of evil in the world. But it's not something separate from us. Like it's an entity that is going to, no, it's in us. We have the evil as a reference, not as a choice. We have repeated that many times in these videos, in our blogs. See, God created evil for us to choose good. It's very simple. In order to have free will. Otherwise, we would be pre-programmed like robots to do good all the time. But God gave us the responsibility, being accountable for. It's like, I'm going to create this for you to choose, because then you have the excuse that you didn't know what you were doing, that you didn't have a reference, you only have apples, you couldn't choose between apples and other fruit, because I just only give you apples. In this case, it's different, because all fruits are good, but as an example. Anyway, let's continue. The beauty shall decay in the grave, far from their mansion, from the place. In other words, if we believe that they live in a nice place, we're wrong. They belong to the grave because they're temporary. 15. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave. Now, this is David who is talking. He's talking about himself now. Talking about the nations, talking about, as we said before, negative traits and trends in consciousness as the outcome of egos, fantasies, and illusions. And then David is speaking about himself. It's like, you know what, I don't belong to that club. Because I'm depending on this goodness. This is what I am, and this is to what I relate. Okay, this is God will redeem my soul from the power. In other words, this thing that we put power on, these fantasies and illusions, which lead us to death, we're not going to allow them, because God will not let us. I mean, if we are, as we said before, exercising constantly as much as possible goodness as our common bond with God, then this goodness that is God, as King David himself says, God is good. This goodness will protect us. In other words, when we are focusing on positive things will protect us. There's another psalm, I don't remember the number. You know, we use it in the confession, in the bidui, in the daily Jewish prayer, weekday prayer. So at the end he said, let righteousness and integrity protect me. It's interesting. He's not saying, God protect me, you know, put my life on you and you will know what to do. You know, King David is being specific. May righteousness and integrity protect me. It's true. It's one of the wisest things that I have learned from King David. So our own integrity, our own self-reliance in a positive way defends us. Because we know, we're convinced about what we believe. So we don't need anybody seduce us with these ideas or these, fantasies. No. It's like our own clarity of what goodness is protects us. This is the morning light that he mentioned before. So, God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he will receive me forever. So again, we have to return to our source as our essence and true identity from what we came. That's the point. That's our redemption, by the way. The goodness is our redeemer. And this is the way it is. When a person has problems, either financial or an accident or is in confusion, then somebody, a good person, come and show them the way out. That's the redemption. That's the redeemer. usually we use the term, he redeemed himself he was redeemed from jail, was prisoner, was redeemed. It's not a release. It's like he's coming back to his original state of freedom. So let's continue. Don't be afraid when a man is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dies, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. We mentioned that before. He mentioned that before. 18. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men praise you when you do well for yourself. Again, the goodness that we were talking about before. Okay. His glory shall not descend, though while he lived, he blessed his soul. In other words, when we say when he blessed his soul while he was alive, he was doing goodness. It's the blessing. We have said many times that in Latin, blessing is benediction. That's basically the origin of the word blessing. It comes from goodness, bene, bono, bene, goodness. So when we bless, we're talking about goodness here. So he's referring, he says, this when we bless our soul, meaning the integrity of our consciousness, our soul, the whole part of us. Everything would be just fine. Men praise you when you do well for yourself, you do good for yourself. The blessing is goodness. And what rescues and redeems us from our negative traits and trends in consciousness is goodness. So they are replaced by goodness. We replace them by the traits and qualities of goodness. 19. He shall go to the generation of his fathers. Obviously, David is talking about the Jewish forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that were the epitome of goodness. So it's like, this is our root, that's where we came from, this is our forefathers, we're going to go back to them. So again, the origin is like the ancestry, and the ultimate ancestor, who is God. As long as we exercise our essence and true identity, which is goodness, the goodness of our love's ways and attributes, we'll always be connected with our forefathers and with God. And we can return to them after we leave this physical, material world. They shall never see the light. Now, obviously, in this case, David, we have to be careful about this, especially with Isaiah. He's talking to people, he's talking to himself. Talking to people, he's talking to himself. So when he's talking about they, they're talking about the people that he's referring. In this case, the people who lives in the negative predicament of their own fantasies and illusions. These people will never see the light. They will never understand what is the point. In other words, living and devoting an entire life, either 80, 90 years, whatever time span they have. They will live in this fantasy. They will never see. They will believe in their own grave. They will never see the light. The light, again, is the representation of goodness. That brings someone to the light, or bring the light to someone when something is dark. We bring goodness in order to dissipate the evil that is there. The only way to correct evil is to bring in goodness, to replace it with goodness. And we do that in our consciousness. It's not a magical thing. And we say, oh, let the light be, and boom, that's it. We have to correct what we need to correct. So it's interesting the way it's phrased. We repeat it again. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul. And men praise you when you do well for yourself. He, when he lived, blessing his soul. Go to the generation of his fathers. And they say, they shall never see the light. He's talking about the others. He's jumping from one person to the other in the way he's speaking. The prophet Isaiah had the same situation. He's speaking singular, plural, we, I, he, and he's interchanging all the time. So we have to see what is going on, not to get the wrong ideas. So when he's talking to Israel in singular, he's talking to Israel in singular. It's important that we say that because Judaism will understand prophecy as something that is related between Israel and God. Of course, the nations are involved, but directly, the direct connection between prophecy and something material in this world. I mean, the object of prophecy, the purpose of prophecy is related to Israel. So when he's talking about Israel in third person, he's not talking about an individual. He's talking about the individual that represent the collective, the people. So if he calls Israel the land, it's Israel that is called the land, it's not somebody else. So let's have this clear. Here, things happen. David is talking, the Psalm, we have to understand that we have the idea that the Psalms are written, all of them, like David Hamelech, the King David was sitting, writing. Sometimes he was talking to people. And somebody was taking notes. Or even himself remembered. And then he wrote it down. So it's like a conversation. You can read, if you pay attention to some of the Psalms, they're like this. For example, one that we read is beautiful. It's one of the last ones in the book of Psalms. He said, our feet were standing at your gates, Jerusalem. No, he's saying, he said, he speaks in first person. I get happy, I get rejoiced when people told me, let's go to Jerusalem. And then he changed from first to first plural, first singular to first plural. He said, our feet were standing at your gates, Jerusalem. So it's like he's telling someone a personal experience, and then from there he's saying, and we were there. So it's clear that David is talking to someone, actually a group of people when he's talking. And he's referring to some people in plural, and he's referring to a particular person in singular. In this case, the righteous person is in singular. And the guys who are in the dead of the grave in plural. So that's we see the switch. So I hope that it's understood. Verse 20, and it's the last verse of this Psalm 49. Say, a man who has riches without understanding is like the animals that perish. A psalm by Asaph. By the way, David is giving credit to Asaph, who was a Levite, who used to be serving in the temple, in this case, the tabernacle. And he was, he used to sing lots of praises to God in the tabernacle. And David Hamelech decided to include his praisings, Asaph, in the book of Psalms, and he credits him. It's like, this psalm is from Asaph. So it's very beautiful. So anyway, this is how we end our commentary on Psalm 49 by King David. I hope that we have shared the messages of the wisdom of our sages, our mystic sages, especially the sages that we have mentioned many times, from the Hasidic stream, the Hasidic branch, or expression, should we say, of Judaism. So with this we finish, and we wish you, as usual, to have a wonderful week, an amazing Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, and until next time will be Psalm 50 by King David. So until then, have a good time.